Okay, welcome everybody. So we are holding now in the second part of Torah Yud Aleph, Torah number 11. And it's a great place to be. So we started last week, and we'll do a very quick review because we're not too far in, so the review is easy at this point. And we'll see what we can get into, some very deep practical stuff over here. So Torah started and said that there's two special yichudim. There's a yichuda ilah and a yichuda tata. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get rid of this funny background here. It's bothering me. There we go. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. Okay, there's the yichuda ilah and the yichuda tata. That means that there's these two unifications that take place in the upper Kabbalistic realms. And those two unifications correspond to the two sections of the name of Hashem, Yud Ke Vav Ke. The first Yud and He, and the second Vav and He. Each one of those represents one unification. And we say that V'hayel Hashem Lamelech HaKol Haaretz, in that time after Mashiach has come and the whole world is awakened to the existence of Hashem, to the nature of Hashem, and the holiness of the world. On that day, Yeh Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad. Hashem and His name will be one. And that means that there will be an equal unification. Right now, one represents an upper unification and one represents a lower unification. At that time, they will both be on a very exalted level. And those two unifications are represented by the thing that we say, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, is the upper unification, and Baruch Shem Kvod Malchus Olam Vayed is the lower unification. And then we said that through that we are able to come to this existence, this state of Tavunas HaTorah La'amka, of an understanding, a deep understanding of Torah in its depths. And I want to say that means a real intrinsic connection with the wisdom of Hashem. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be, a scholar that has taken a lot of tests. Or it doesn't mean that I will be able to memorize a bunch of facts. It means that I'm going to have a tavunas haTorah la'umka. Tavuna means an integrated understanding. I'm going to have a deep, deep understanding that the Torah is going to be part of me, a whole different existence, a whole different level. So that's what we're working for. That's what we're working towards in this Torah. We're working towards getting to Tavunas HaTorah La'umka, deep understanding of Torah through these two levels of unification that happen through the Shema. And then we said, because someone who's on a very low level is not able to have such a deep understanding of Torah, and in order to get to that level, the only way to achieve that is to refine our dibur, our speech. And it's through the speech, through the power of speech, through using speech in the right way, that we are able to get to this level. Because the speech illuminates the path of tshuva, and someone who's far away, who has not done tshuva, is not able to attain this level of deep understanding of Torah. So by refining our speech, we're going to be able to get to that level of deep understanding of Torah through tshuva, because the refining our speech will help us to open our path of tshuva. And we spoke about a lot of examples about how this might work last week, and it's all very, very, very practical and very, very, it's this type of thing that we can all feel very strongly. We know that when we're using our speech in the wrong way, and when we're using our speech in an arrogant way, and not in a not truthful way, it covers up everything important, and it covers up our own difficulties, so that we may brush them under the carpet instead of actually facing them. Because if something comes to us and it starts to give us a little bit of rebuke on our own personal character traits, so we can brush it off by lying. We can brush it off by putting the person down who was talking to me, right? It's a way to cover over our own existence. But if our speech is pure and it's coming from the right place and it's truthful, then, and it's not used to be authoritative over other people. It puts us into a path of truth and of connection to Hashem and of tshuva. So it's a very special idea, and we'll get into it more. And then we brought this mashal from the line in the Gemara about Teven and tshuva. And that's where we're at. And then the last thing we said was an introduction to this week. So we all know this is where we're at. We have to refine our speech into a way that it illuminates a path for us. And through that, we will get to deep understanding of Torah and make these two yichudim, unifications of the name of Hashem. So we said last week, ladibur sheyair loy efshar lizkos ki im ayidei kavod. But we cannot get to this level of dibur, of speech, that's going to illuminate a path for us, except through the concept of kavod, of honor. Hainu, sheyire, sheyiyeh, kavod Hashem yisbarach b'shleimus. That we ensure that the honor of Hashem yisbarach is complete. Sheyeh kavoidai la'ayin neged kavod Hashem yisbarach. And how do I do that? By ensuring that I realize that my honor is nothing compared to the honor of Hashem. My honor is not what I'm looking for. My honor is not on the table. I'm always looking out to make sure that the honor of Hashem is being cared for and lifted up. So that means Hainu al yedei anava v'katnus. How do I do that? Through being humble and being lowly. Ki ikar bechinas adibur hu mikavod, because the main aspect of dibur comes from kavod. K'moshe kasuv mi hu ze melech hakavod. We see that the pasuk connects melech and kavod, so honor together with king, and we know, as we explained last time, that the mouth and the speech that comes out of it is called malchus peh. It's the mouth is connected to malchus, which is kingdom, kingship. So mihuzeh melech hakavod, just like melech is connected to kavod, so too melech is connected to the mouth, to peh, malchus peh. And we explained, if you remember, this whole idea of the king and how he gets out what's in his intellect through his mouth. That's how he gives over his desires for the kingdom into the kingdom. That's how his desires are revealed into the kingdom through the mouth. And in the Kabbalistic spheres, if they're arranged, as we said, it goes through the whole human body, but you can also take any one of those body parts and split it up into 10 parts. And if you take the head and split it up into 10 parts, the mouth is the lowest part, is the malchus. So malchus peh, the mouth is the malchus. The mouth is where our intent and our desires and our intellect is revealed into the world. When you think about it this way, you could really see, why is speech so important? Think about this. Speech is how you reveal yourself in the world. Your speech is the tool to reveal your inner self into the world. It's mamish, a very, very serious thing. Very serious. You can imagine, what impression you put into the world, right? And what do people think of you? How do people connect to you? Is all based on what comes out of your mouth. So if you let your speech go out of control, and you put people down, you yell and scream, you that's your malchus coming into the world. And what are you? You're like a tyrannical dictator, and that's what people see. That's your revelation in the world. Mashen kain, not like if we use our speech from a place of being humble and being lowly, then our speech comes out in a way that Hashem is king. Our speech comes out in a way that Hashem is king, and we end up being a channel for godliness, as opposed to just a tyrannical dictator. Right? It's very, very serious stuff. So that's where we're holding now. So let's see now how this concept goes forward. That the mouth, the speech, is malchus, and we have to ensure that we have kavod, the honor of Hashem, always in our speech. Okay, and this is going to go into some pretty serious places. So everybody, gird your loins, pull up your bootstraps, Think of some other cliches to get us going here. Think of your own. Let's go. Because when the Torah comes in to diburim pegumim, to words and speech that is blemished, when the Torah is spoken with words that are blemished, lepeh pagum, through a mouth that is blemished, when the Torah is spoken through a mouth that is blemished, not only will those words of Torah not illuminate for that person, not only will the Torah not be illuminating to anybody, that's what we want, right? The Torah is supposed to illuminate for us. And if we use our mouth properly, then we should be able to say over Torah that is illuminating, that lights a path for people. And if our mouth is blemished, if we use our mouth in the wrong way, and like we said, we speak lashon hara, we have nivel peh, we speak with a swearing and disgusting language, we put people down, we're authoritarian, we do whatever we do, terrible things with our mouth, right? Then our mouth is blemished. Our mouth has a blemish. And if our mouth is blemished, then not only will those words of Torah not illuminate, and the words that come out of our mouth will not illuminate, not only that, the words of Torah will become misgashem. This is a hard word to translate. So, gashmius, right, means physicality, really. It means the opposite of spirituality. Misgashem means to take something that is inherently spiritual and to take it out of that place of the spiritual and bring it down into a lower physical existence. And mischashech means to darken. So in other words, when this mouth that is pugum, that is blemished, speaks words of Torah, it brings them down from that place where they're supposed to be. It brings them down from that place of illumination and darkens them and sullies them, muddies them, puts them into the earth. Right? What should we be doing when we speak words of Torah with a holy mouth? We should be drawing the light into the world and being a conduit for that light. We should be illuminating the world with our words of Torah. But if our mouth is broken, if our mouth is pugum, if our mouth is blemished, then those words of Torah, they come down as darkness. And they come down as dirt. Chas v'shalom. God forbid. That's what happens. Kamosha Kosov, like the pasuk says. So, the pasuk in Yoshua says that I think the Navi said to Yoshua, this is what was said to Yoshua after Yoshua took over from Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was taking them into Eretz Yisrael. So it was said to him, Lo yamush sefer haTorah hazeh mipicha, that this book of Torah, this sefer Torah, should not be yamush hazeh mipicha. So what does yamush mean? Over here it means really, in the simple translation, it means that the Torah should not be removed from your mouth. It should always be there. You should always have the Torah on your lips, right? But in a deeper sense, that word yamush means bechinas vayamesh choshech, right? So during the plague of darkness in Egypt, the plague of darkness, it says vayamesh choshech, and it means that that yamesh choshech means that the darkness of the plague of darkness was a thick, tangible darkness. It's not that the lights went out in Egypt during the plague of darkness. Rather, there was a darkness that was physically tangible. It was like a thickness in the world, so that people couldn't even move properly because the darkness was so thick. Yamesh, the same word. Meaning what? That darkness became something very super dark and tangible, thick, something you could feel. It became a substance. It became misgashem. It went from being spiritual and light to being tangible in the darkness. Lo yamesh haTorah zeh mipicha So what was the Navi saying to Yeshua? That the Torah should not become dark and should not become physicalized. It should not become dirty and dark through your mouth. Don't allow that to happen, Yeshua, is what the Navi was saying. Because if a person is not careful to always ensure that the honor of Hashem is b'shleimus, is complete. How does this happen? How does it happen that a person does not allow the honor of Hashem to be complete and to be the main thing in his life? Hainu al yedei gadlus. It's through gadlus. That means arrogance. It's through a person being a bal gaiva, being full of themselves, being arrogant. Through that, a person is not able to open their mouth. The pasuk says in Tehillim that the mouth was closed up because they spoke with geus, with gaiva. In other words, when someone is arrogant, their mouth becomes shut. Now, it doesn't mean that their mouth really becomes shut, because obviously, anybody here ever met a person who's arrogant? Or has anybody here ever been arrogant at any point in their life? Right? So is that arrogant person a quiet person? Right? Not usually. The arrogant person talks a lot, sometimes. But the words are not heard. The words don't have an impact. And that's what we're saying over here. Someone who's arrogant, their words will not stick. They will not be heard. It's as if their mouth is closed. Kamaisa de Levi bar Sisa, just like the story that happened in the Gemara, in the Yerushalmi, that there was a holy person. His name is Levi bar Sisa, very, very big Talmud Chacham, big tzaddik. She'aluhu labima, that he was brought into a certain place in the city. They put him in a position of honor, where he had to sit way up high on a special chair, that in a position of honor. V'tafas ruchayalav, and a spirit of like arrogance came over him. V'loy anivon, and he was not able to speak. So in other words, when he was put up into this place and his arrogance, he started to feel that his arrogance was coming up, he was not able to speak. So meaning what? We said, the main point that we said over here was that in order for our speech to be powerful, and in order for our speech to be illuminating, and to be a speech that lights us up, and that lights other people up, and illuminates a path for ourselves and for other people, it has to have one special ingredient. And that ingredient is the kavod of Hashem, the honor of Hashem. And if the kavod is going to me, then there's no kavod to Hashem. And that's a hard and fast rule. The Gemara says that Hashem says that it's not possible for an arrogant person and me to exist at the same time. If my honor is in the picture, then Hashem's honor is gone. Right? It's just gone. And it comes up in so many ways. So many ways. And I was thinking a lot about this today. And, someone might say, so how could it be? Just let's say someone's becoming a tzaddik. And someone is really amazing. And this person sees that, wow, things are happening and people are coming to them. And this person is becoming a big tzaddik, and this person is able to do holy things. Right? So how can that person not have some type of arrogance? Isn't that person going to realize, wow, look what's happening. Look what I'm doing. Where's their arrogance going to be? Shouldn't they have some type of arrogance? How does it work? And the answer is really, absolutely not. The more that person grows, and the more that person sees their success and sees what's happening in the world through them, the more they realize that it's just all coming from Hashem. And all that person is just a conduit. They've become humble enough that the shefa is able to come into them from Hashem. And they're going to realize this the farther they get. Why? Because the more that the arrogance is there, the less flow there is. And the more they remove their arrogance, the more flow from Hashem there's going to be. So the higher a person gets, and the holier a person gets, the less arrogance they will have, the more humble they will be, and the bigger of a channel they will be just to bring the light of Hashem into the world. So, if we want to be able to do this, right, we want to attach ourselves to this Tivunas HaTorah Lumka, this deep understanding of Torah, through the illuminating nature of our proper speech, it has to be that always in our speech is the honor of Hashem. Always. And so remember, what's the practical advice over here? Whenever we're about to say something, especially if we have a feeling like, should I say this? Should I talk right now? Should I say what I'm about to say? That's usually a good indication that probably not. I should probably keep my mouth shut, right? But right away, what's the first thought? Is what I'm going to say right now going to bring honor to Hashem? Am I going to be using my words right now to bring honor to Hashem? And this will work in absolutely any situation. Any situation. And if my words are not going to bring honor to Hashem, zip. Stop it. That's it. Done. So this is the step that we're at. So let's take it to the next few steps, because we're going to get even deeper. Because through arrogance, which is an aspect of avodah zarah, idol worship. If you guys remember, we had this totally in our last Torah. It's a good segue over here. That arrogance and idol worship are one thing. Nowadays, when hopefully most of us are not bowing down to any idols, I can assume, we don't have such a propensity towards idol worship. The modern day idol worship, there's a few aspects of it. We're going to see another one later on in this one, but the main one is arrogance. We said kol gavalev, the toyeva. A toyeva is kol gavalev. Anyone who has a haughty heart, it's called a toyeva. And a toyeva, an abomination, is what avodah zarah is called. And through that link together, we see that idol worship is connected to arrogance. So, Aidei Geus, hu bechinas avodas elilim, which is a type of avodah zarah. Avodas elilim kasiv, and by regarding avodah zarah, idol worship, it's written, Pesile Eloheihem tisrafun ba'esh. The idols of their gods, burn them in fire. Okay, avodah zarah. Here's a rule: if you happen to be in, a couple thousand years ago, when there's idols all over the place, what do you do if you come in contact with an idol? What do you got to do? Tisrafun ba'esh. You got to burn it, destroy it by fire. Right? That's how you get rid of an idol. And it's a commandment, by the way. Tisrafun ba'esh, burn it. Now, there's another concept in halacha that goes like this: V'chol ha'omed lisroif kesarov dami, ukesuse michtas shiura. So listen to this. The Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says like this: you have to blow a shofar on Rosh Hashanah, right? Everybody knows about the shofar blowing. What just happened here? Sorry guys, my computer just did something. Yeah, so everyone knows you have to blow a shofar on Rosh Hashanah. And of course, like everything in Jewish law, there are many details about exactly how that shofar has to be a kosher shofar. Okay? So it has to be a certain size. And it has to be from a certain animal. It can't have cracks, so on and so forth. And if it's not the right size, if it's too small, it can't be used as a shofar. It has to have a certain size requirement, as there are in many, many different items of mitzvahs. Can you remember that? A shofar has to be a certain size. And then, there's another important halacha, and that is that if you have something that has been used for avodah zarah, and now you come in contact with it and you realize what it is, it has now a din on it, a law, a judgment on it, that it must be burned. And we have a special principle in the Gemara that anything that has this din on it, that it must be burned, it has to be destroyed, it's as if it's already destroyed. It's as if it already doesn't exist. Meaning, you can't use it for anything. Since it must be destroyed, halachically, we consider it as if it's gone already, basically. And you can't use it for anything. So if you have a shofar that was used in Avodah Zarah. And now that shofar has a din on it, a judgment on it, that it must be burned. It's considered as if it's not really there, therefore it doesn't fulfill the size requirements for the shofar. Because since it has to be burned, it's like it's already gone. So it's as if it's not there and it doesn't fulfill the size requirements for the shofar. And therefore, since the size has been totally reduced and destroyed, he no longer has a voice with which to speak. So like this, meaning that just like if you have a shofar that was used for Avodah Zarah, it must be burned, it has a punishment, it has a din, a law that it must be burned, and since it must be burned, it's as if it's not really there, it doesn't really exist, and therefore it doesn't fulfill the proper requirement to be a shofar, and now it won't do the work of the shofar. It won't work. If you blow that on Rosh Hashanah, you didn't do the mitzvah. And halachically, you didn't do the mitzvah. And secondly, it won't spiritually affect the people the way it's supposed to. The shofar is a voice, and the shofar is meant to wake us up, and to illuminate our neshamas, and to wake us up to do tshuva. That's what the shofar does. And if it was used for Avodah Zarah, it won't work. So too, if our words were used for arrogance, which is Avodah Zarah, if we used our words from a place of haughtiness and authority and lashon hara and all these things that require arrogance, if I use my mouth for that, my mouth won't work for the right stuff anymore, because it has a din on it that it should be burned. You hear? So gewaldic. See, Rabbi Nachman took a Talmudic principle of law and showed how it applies in the same way of Avodah Zarah to the Avodah Zarah of a person's mouth nowadays. Totally amazing. If we use our mouth for dirty things, our mouth becomes dirty. If we use our mouth for these things, it breaks our ability to speak properly, and it breaks the power of our words, God forbid, and we will have no power to illuminate. Kishehu nizar v'shomer kavod Hashem b'shleimos. But if we are careful and we guard the honor of Hashem, that it should always be complete, shehu nivze be'einav v'nimas, that I bring myself down in my own eyes. Through this, I am able to speak words of illumination. What does the pasuk say in Yecheskel? That the world was illuminated with his kavod, with the honor of Hashem. The honor of Hashem lights up the world. The honor of Hashem brings light into the world. So when I use my words for the honor of Hashem, it lights up the word. And what does that light do? That light lights up a path that I can follow in tshuva. That I can follow to become a better person, to become closer to Hashem. Because without this light, I'm in the dark. And it's hard to find exactly the right way to do tshuva. But when I follow the path that Rabbi Nachman is giving us, it's going to illuminate that path for me and help me to see the right way to do tshuva. Just imagine for a second, if I could just throw in something very, very practical, a situation. Just imagine that you have a person who's trying to do tshuva. And part of tshuva is always working on our arrogance, becoming humble. And let's say it's a person who's working on anger. Let's say it's a person who's working on anger and arrogance together, right? And this person is not of the mindset that we're talking about. So what's going to happen? What's going to happen that day? They're going to go and they're going to get into a situation, and they're going to have a misunderstanding with somebody, or they're just going to have a regular office interaction with somebody, or a husband and wife interaction. And as we said before, what's going to happen? Someone's going to say something, and the other one's going to take it personally, and then that person's going to get angry, and is going to give to the other person, and that person's going to say, whoa, what are you? Hold on a second. What are you getting so upset about? The other one's going to say, what are you talking? I'm not upset, and then and so on and so forth, and then they're going to keep going, and no tshuva will take place. In fact, things will get worse and worse. And that person will miss the boat always. And this will be this person's life. Over and over again, this person will have the same experience of argument and anger and frustration and separation from people. Over and over again. Argument, anger, frustration, arrogance, and separation. Over and over again. Why? Because the person is in total darkness. And the person does not understand whatsoever what is wrong in their life and what is the way to get out of this situation. Rabbi Nachman is telling us that once we start to engage this path and we start to work on this aspect of our dibur, of our speech, and we start to refine it, and we start to think about the way we're speaking, then that is going to start to illuminate the path for us. We're going to start to see the pathway of getting out of this darkness. And just imagine that person. The next time they get into this situation, probably they won't be successful. But at least afterwards, they'll be like, you know what, I remember now. I see that I got angry and I got arrogant and this all happened. And then the next time, maybe they'll catch themselves halfway through. And maybe they'll storm out of the conversation angry, but at least they'll catch themselves. And then maybe the time after that, they will go into the conversation and they'll be prepared a little bit more. So right at the beginning, they'll catch themselves and they'll say, okay, I'm sorry, I have to just calm down, I have to relax. And then the next time, it won't even get there. And that will be illuminating a path of tshuva for them through their speech. And this will work in many other ways. That's the obvious speech relating to speech, arrogance relating to humility. But in every aspect of life, when we start to use our speech in this way, Hashem will illuminate the path for us and we'll start to see where we can go. But we have to do it. Remember? Like we said, don't let these words of Rabbi Nachman be just words. We must put these into practice. We must be thinking about these things every day. Okay, let's go a little weiter. What are we holding here? Okay, we're now on letter Gimel, by the way, on page 170 in the Likutei Moharan over here. The kavod b'shleimus eino ki im al yedei vav sheyamshich l'soicha. Real kavod, real honor, in its completion, can only exist when the letter vav, the Hebrew letter vav, is drawn into it. Ki b'loi vav nishar kavad peh. Because without the vav, a person remains with a speech impediment, heavy of tongue, heavy mouthed. V'alidei vav hu bechinas kavod v'lo yidon. But if you put the vav in, then you have a person who has kavod v'lo yidon and is not silent. Meaning like this. We know that Moshe Rabbeinu, when Hashem came to him and said, Moshe Rabbeinu, he didn't call him Rabbeinu, but he said, Moshe, I want you to go and lead the Jewish people out of Egypt. What did Moshe Rabbeinu say? He said, sorry, you have the wrong person. I have a speech impediment. And he did have a speech impediment. Right? The Medrash says that when he was a baby, that he was tested in the house of Paro to see if he was after the crown, and he reached for the crown, and so they said, no, maybe he's just attracted to shiny things. So they took out a hot coal, and he grabbed it, and I think an angel nudged his hand, and it touched his mouth and burned his mouth, and so they were showing that he wasn't going for the crown. He was just a baby who was attracted to shiny things, like a hot coal, like a crown, right? But it burned his mouth and gave him a speech impediment. So Moshe Rabbeinu could not speak properly. And he told Hashem, you got the wrong guy. I have a speech impediment. And Hashem said, don't worry, I will be your mouthpiece and your brother Aaron will be your mouthpiece. But what is the lashon that Moshe Rabbeinu used to say that I can't speak? Apparently I can't speak either. So he said that I'm kavad peh. I have a heavy mouth. Kavad peh. Kavad peh, not being able to speak, is the word kavod with the vav taken out. kavod is chaf beis vav dalid. That means honor. Kavad, heavy, kavad peh, is just chaf beis dalid. It's the same word with the vav taken out, right? So without the vav, what does a person have? Kavad peh. With the vav, a person has kavod, and like the pasuk says in Tehillim, kavod v'lo yidim. I have the honor of Hashem, v'lo yidim, and therefore I will not be silent. When I have the kavod of Hashem, I am able to speak, and my words do something and accomplish something. So the vav is what is necessary in the word kavod in order to accomplish all this. So what does the vav mean? Get ready for the next step. Kikol makom shenemar vav hu moisif. So it's a fact that wherever you find the vav, the Gemara says this, it's coming to add something on. The Gemara says it's coming to add something. It's coming to add something like extra. It's not apparent. And the Zohar actually says that the vav is a letter of emes. It adds truth into the situation. But standardly, what does the letter vav mean? At the beginning of a word, it means and. The vav adds something, right? So, the Gemara says, Hainu, B'chinas Tosefes Kedusha. What does it add on? It adds on holiness. It adds on Kedusha. Hainu, and what is a Tosefes Kedusha? What is an adding on of Kedusha? Is Shmiras Habris. Is guarding the covenant. And that means, we're referring to the bris milah, we're referring to in the realm of man and woman relationships, shmiras habris, keeping that aspect of ourselves holy. The Gemara says, Kol makom she'ata moitze geder erva, every place you see a geder erva, that means any place you see that a person has built up fences against forbidden relationships, ata moitze kedusha. In that place, you will find holiness. So there's this aspect of tosefes kedusha, of an addition of kedusha, of holiness, where you have an addition of shmira, of guarding against this realm. And it's not just even that simple. Let's go Kabbalah for a second over here. Everybody remembers the order of the Suras, right? By the way, if you have this Likutei Moharan book, this one, in the back of the book, I don't know if you all know this, but it has a whole bunch of diagrams, and there's a really good one here that lists all the Suras over here, see? So if you have this, you have a good roadmap for how this works. But anyway, the letter Vav is corresponding to this aspect of purity in sexual relationships. So how do we see that? So we know that in the spheres you have the intellectual spheres of Keser, Chochma, and Bina, or sometimes Chochma, Bina, and Das. And then in the lower body spheres, I'm sure there's a good word for that, you have Chesed, Gevura, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yesod. Those in Kabbalah are called the Vak, the Vav Ketzavos, the 6 lower spheres, which make up the parts of Zer Anpin. But the 6th sphera is Yesod. The 6th sphera is the sphere that corresponds to the sexual organs. So the Vav is number 6, right? The letter Vav corresponds to Yesod, corresponds to the sexual organs, reproductive organs. So over here, when we're talking about this idea of the Vav and the addition of Kedusha, we see it in the Kabbalistic universe very, very clearly. Not to mention, the Zohar says that the Vav is actually, it's like a stick. It's in the shape of the reproductive organ of a man. And also we see that, of course, Yosef HaTzadik is called, what happened to Yosef HaTzadik? In Mitzrayim, he became called Tzaddik. He got the name Tzaddik because of his incredible strength when he was put into very serious temptation in this realm. And he was able to stand back, right? So he was called Yosef HaTzadik. He's the only one who's called Yosef HaTzadik in the Chumash that has the name Tzaddik that had this aspect. So tzaddik Yosef is connected to total purity and strength in this realm of kedushas habris. So why is that important with our vav conversation over here? That we're relating the letter vav to all these aspects, because. So first of all, the tzaddik is called tzaddik Yesod Olam, right? He's called Yesod Olam because of this aspect of Yesod, which is that sphera of the reproductive organs. And also, this is totally, like the Kabbalistic world and all of the Torah is like, the more you learn, the more you see that it's just a supernatural existence. And it's impossible that everything just happens to work out this way. But so Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov's name, his name is 7 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. If you take the gematria of Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is 26, and multiply it by 7, it comes out to the same gematria as Yaakov. Yosef, who is tzaddik and Yesod and had Shmiras Abris, of course, it has to work out exactly that the gematria of Yosef is 6 times Yud Kei Vav Kei. You couldn't make this up. You couldn't put all this stuff together with a supercomputer. It's just everything fits together in every aspect of Mishnah, Gemara, Chumash, Navi, Nach, Kabbalah. It all fits together in this totally amazing puzzle. So anyway, what do we see from all this amazing, totally awesome stuff? That the vav of kavod, the vav that we have to put in kavod, in other words, in order to have our elevated speech that is going to illuminate the world, it has to be with honor, with kavod. And kavod, honor of Hashem. Kavod is only kavod when it has that vav in it. What does that vav represent? It represents purity in the realm of physical relations. It represents also, as we're going to see, a person's own dignity in this realm, a person's own respect for themselves in this realm. And that's what the letter Vav means. So let's see a little bit weiter. Kizeh tali bazeh. Now, this is going to get really, deep and really personal, and I'm sure many of us can feel this. But he says that these two things are tied together intrinsically: arrogance and niuf, geus and niuf, arrogance and promiscuity. Kamoi, one second. Like Chazal say, al pasuk, on the pasuk, there's a pasuk that says in Mishlei, "Ve'eshes ish nefesh yikara tatzud." So the pasuk says that an adulteress, she traps a nefesh yikara, a precious soul. The simple meaning of the verse is that if you have a lady who's an adulteress, who's like a prostitute type of person, she will entrap a precious soul. But what it means, on the next level understanding, is nefesh yakara means a nefesh that in its own eyes is yakara, is elevated, is lofty. So a person who is an arrogant person will be intrinsically drawn into immoral relations, into illicit relations. I don't know what's the best word for these in English, but into illicit relations. And if you stop and think for a little bit, arrogance and these types of things go hand in hand in so many ways. On the one hand, there's an aspect of giving yourself pleasure at the expense of what Hashem wants you to do. It's giving the honor and the pleasure to yourself when you know that that's not what Hashem wants. That's literally giving yourself the honor and not Hashem the honor. There's also, there's so many things tied up in this type of relationship between a man and a woman. And from, there can be an aspect of control, right? Especially, unfortunately from the male side, there can be an aspect of control in this relationship where a person engaging in this is really using an aspect of arrogance and control over this other person, right? And in the same way, from a female side, a female can find herself able to control a man and bring him in and manipulate him, I guess, in the same way, right? By pulling him in and being in control, right? That's one aspect. And then there's is that making sense? It's kind of sort of a hard path to walk down, right? That's one aspect, which I think we can all feel this aspect of arrogance. But there's another really, really unfortunate side, and that is when a person has a really low self-esteem. And when that person has such low self-esteem that their arrogance comes out as a way to protect that low self-esteem, to lift that person up. And a person can start to feel that I'm not valuable. I don't have dignity. I'm not valuable. And if I allow myself to be in that relationship with somebody, right, then I will feel like that person wants me. I'll feel like I have something. I will be lifted up a little bit. And it's a very, very, very sad situation that unfortunately many people, especially, young people in today's day and age, and people on the internet can get pulled into these types of situations, and really terrible, bad things can happen. And in so many ways, this relationship is tied very, very strongly into arrogance. And I think we can see that very clearly with all of these aspects. So this purity in this area only gives us the strength to be able to exist in a world where we honor Hashem. And the honor is not about me. It's about honoring Hashem. And when I can honor Hashem, the kavod with the vav, which represents shmiras habris, then I can elevate my speech to this level of dibur that is me'ir, that illuminates a pathway for everybody and for myself. Okay, so let's just finish off with this last part here, and we'll be ready for next week. So like this, last paragraph, page 172. Valkein, therefore, bris mechuna b'shem shakai. Okay, so there's a name of Hashem that everybody probably knows. We don't say the full name properly, and we always put in the letter kuf into one of Hashem's names when we want to say it without saying it properly. So the name is El, and then Shin, Dalid, and Yud. Aleph Lamed, and then Shin, Dalid, Yud, right? So we say it Kel Shakai in order to not say the names of Hashem by mistake, like I just did twice. Right? Kel Shakai. So that name, Shin, Dalid, and Yud, is the name that relates to Shmiras Habris, that relates to this concept. How do we see that? Kamosha Kosov, like the pasuk says in Bereshis, Hashem says, Ani Kel Shakai Pere Urave. I am Kel Shakai, this name, be fruitful and multiply. So the commandment that is connected to the commandment of having physical relations to procreate is connected to the name Kel Shakai. So what does that name mean? Ki Shakai, because this name of Shin and Dalet and Yud, hu bechinas sheyesh dai be'elokusi bechol habriya, that there is enough. Dai, the word dai in Hebrew means enough. Like anybody who's ever had a high-tempered Israeli school teacher. Dai! Enough! Right? Or parent, I guess, also. Dai means enough. Sheyesh dai be'elokusi, there's enough in my godliness, says Hashem, for the whole entire creation. Right? That's what the name Kel Shakai means. She, that, dai, enough, be'elokusi, of me to go around. There's enough of Hashem to go. You don't need anything else. In other words, you don't need an avodah zarah, you don't need an idol, you don't need, any other religion, you don't need any other suspicions or superstitions. I'm enough for you, don't worry. It says that's this name of Hashem. But when we don't guard the covenant, Hainu al yedei geus, which means what? Through arrogance. Hu oiseh la'atzmai avodas aliyim. You turn yourself into an avodah zarah, into an idol. Hu mareh she'ein dai loy belakusa. You're showing Hashem, I've made myself into arrogance. I've made myself into my own idol. And since I've become my own idol, I'm my own avodah zarah, I'm saying the opposite of that name of God. I'm saying, no, Hashem, you're not enough. Because I have to build myself up. Because you're not enough. If Hashem was enough, the person would not have to build themselves up and become arrogant in this realm. The person could be very humble and could just be a vessel waiting to receive what Hashem has to give. But when a person builds their arrogance up, right, they're showing that Hashem's not enough. And that's why this name that is corresponding to Shmiras HaBris, to guarding the covenants, right? It's the opposite of, you can only have that name if the person is humble. If the person is arrogant, that name can't exist. So, Avodah Zarah and not guarding the covenants are totally opposite to the name Kel Shakai and to Shmiras HaBris and to the honor of Hashem. Exactly. Because you need yourself as an idol. Therefore, you're making a blemish in this name of Hashem, Shakai. But when a person guards the covenant, when a person is careful in these realms, then this person, through this path that we explained, will merit to have an illuminating light that will illuminate the path of them to tshuva. So once again, just working backwards very quickly for a quick review. If I'm guarding the covenant, if I'm being very careful in the realms of these physical relationships, then I am adding the vav into the word kavod. Because if I'm very careful in these realms, it means that I'm not building up my own ego. I'm not being an arrogant person, because only an arrogant person gets involved in these types of relationships. So by lowering my own ego, I'm raising up the kavod of Hashem. And that vav from Shmiras HaBris, from guarding the covenant, goes into the word chav beis daled and makes kavod. And when I'm giving the honor to Hashem, then that comes out in refined speech. And my refined speech is what will illuminate a path for me to be able to see how to do tshuva. And when I can do this tshuva, I'll become close to Hashem, and I'll get to this level where I can have this deep understanding, deep, intrinsic, connective understanding of the Torah. And that's the pathway so far. Next week, we're going to start off with an introduction, with a review, and then a quick understanding of how some of the Kabbalistic spheres are working here, and we'll see how there's a direct flow. All of these three things that we just talked about, these in the pathway, correspond specifically to the Kabbalistic spheres of Bina, Zer Anpin, and Malchus. And they follow that exact flow. And just like the bottom of Zer Anpin is Yesoid, which is that the reproductive organs, Yesoid will only flow into Malchus, which is the mouth. The mouth will only have that refined speech when we have that Tikkun HaBris, that Shmiras HaBris of the Yesoid. And then the understanding of the Torah from Bina will flow down and we'll be able to create this pathway. But we'll see that in a little more depth next week.